This is the Haulin Assets podcast, where we show you how to start and run your own trucking company. Ever wanted to go out on your own? Follow Chris as he goes through the highs and lows of running on his own authority.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Haulin Assets podcast, episode number 157, where we're talking about being the leader that your trucking company needs. Whether it's just you or there's 150 of you. Okay, we're going to talk about leadership today. But before we do, a couple of plugs. Now, don't hit the 30-second fast forward thing because this one's a little different than normal. Last night, Haulin Assets Academy went live, and Chris is going to tell us about it. Hey, I'm Craig. Oh, over there, that's Chris. Hey, Chris.
Hey, Craig, how are you?
So, Haulin Assets Academy. We've been talking about it for months now.
Yeah, and we've been working on it for actually over a year.
Yeah.
So finally, all the work's starting to come to fruition, and it's ready to go.
So before we get to the topic of the day, just so that people know why we're plugging this, what they can get out of it, what is Haulin Assets Academy? Why should somebody go check it out?
So Haulin Assets Academy's got a lot of learning tools to help people be successful in the trucking industry. So it's going to grow and it's going to expand as time goes on. Right now, we've basically got 3 modules in there that people can download. One of them's roughly about becoming an owner operator, kind of making that transition, and that one retails for $49. Then we've got another one on bookkeeping, which goes into all kinds of things. If you decide you want to do all your bookkeeping and accounting on your own, it helps you get everything set up. It helps you understand bookkeeping. It does some accounting lessons. It's really good. That module sells for $299. And then the third module is the dispatching module, where
Your personal module then.
My personal module. So that's the one that I spent the most time building. And it takes a deep dive into all the tools I use, how I use them, shows you, like, it uses screenshots and shows you what I do. So it basically takes, the dispatching, I dispatched for, I've been doing it for about a year now, super solid for 6 months. And it took everything I learned in 6 months and compressed it into this really good course, so that you don't have to, you can learn what I did in a matter of a few days versus months, and it will make you a better dispatcher and a more efficient dispatcher. I'll show you the tools that I use. It's pretty awesome. So that one retails for $399.
Because that's probably the most valuable one anyway. I don't know. They all sound like you should get them.
Yeah, I think both the accounting and the dispatching module are, if you think about, what we're charging for them versus how many hours of your life it will save
to learn that stuff,
you're paying pennies on the dollars.
Right,
it's really good. It's really good material, and we're offering a discount to the first 100 people that purchase it. We're actually going to sell the, what would essentially be $750 value, all 3 of those bundles, for $399. So the price that you'd pay for just the dispatching one, you get all 3 modules.
Holy crap.
For just the first 100 people.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. And who knows what the future will hold, coupon codes and stuff, but they won't be that good.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. I actually, as you know, Chris, and as other people who have listened for a long time know, I'm in the content creation game, and I've done courses like this before. They are not easy to make. They are incredibly time intensive to fashion it in such a way that it's actually helpful, right? And I honestly, you sprung the pricing on me, and I'm shocked. Now I sound like an infomercial. Okay, now I sound like an infomercial, but I'm legitimately shocked that the prices are that low. So
yeah, it's good stuff. There's workbooks. There's all kinds of things to help teach, train, see. You can watch them multiple times. It's pretty good. So to get that special, the bundle deal that I'm talking about, there's 2 ways you can get to it. I'm going to have a link in the show notes, so somebody can go to the HaulinAssetsLLC.com episode 157, and it'll be on that in the show notes on that episode. Or if you just go to, the website's HaulinAssetsAcademy.com. You can go there You can select the bundle, and if you just type early bird as your discount code, early bird, one word, that'll get you that savings as well.
Okay, for the first 100 people. And I'll be sure to include that in the show notes that go out on, iTunes and Spotify and YouTube and all that. So wherever you are, wherever you're listening, just look down in the description and I will make sure that there's a link there for you. Awesome. Okay, Haulin Assets Academy. And I'm sure we're going to hear more about it as the weeks and months go on. But for now, let's talk leadership stuff. Well, actually, you know what? No, let's not talk leadership stuff. Let's talk, how's your week been? And I always want the stories, and we always front load the episodes. A professional would tell us that, no, you put the stories at the end, right? No, I want your stories now, Chris.
Yeah. If you haul anything in trucking, you're going to have load shifts. We've been dealing with, it seems like, our fair share of load shifts in the last month or so. And we just recently had one a few days ago. Like, it just blows my mind.
Is this like a tipping pallet
like a tipping pallet, that kind of thing. This particular example's potatoes, but I've seen this with like cottage cheese. I mean, that happened to me. I think it was cottage cheese or yogurt that I was hauling.
Oh no.
And wherever you drive, especially if you're in the mountains, you're going to hit curves. There's going to be some inertia. There's going to be forces that are causing pallets to kind of sway or tip a little bit. And it just blows my mind sometimes how poorly shippers pack stuff. Like this particular situation is, potatoes can come in all kinds of different forms. A lot of the times they come in big bags and they stack the bags on a pallet.
Usually oblong, kind of round.
Shut up, Craig. You're getting smart alecky already. Anyway, they stack them on these pallets, and the stacks end up being taller than me. And they weigh, each pallet weighs thousands of pounds.
Right.
And, in this particular case, they put like not even 2 full wraps, like a wrap and a half of cellophane over like the top 2 feet of the load. And they expect that's just going to hold it. And so anyway, we had a driver show up, and a couple of the pallets and they hadn't even really tipped. It was just like the pressure of everything had caused some of the lower bags to kind of shift and tilt a little bit. And it's like, and then they want to blame it on the driver. Oh, your driver just drove really crappy. And like, no, this is actually a good driver. He's not driving crappy. And you just didn't pack it right. You didn't do a good job. I mean, this is normal transit.
Does the driver get to inspect that and reject and say, hey, no, I can't take these potatoes like this?
Sometimes, some places they'll let you, but especially since COVID, a lot of the times they're not letting drivers on the dock anymore, and so they can't even look at it.
Wow. Okay. Well, careful out there, folks, I guess. Is there any upshot to that story?
I would love to hear other people's, like, how have you fought this? Like, put in the show notes or on a YouTube comment or somewhere, like, what have you done to fight when you have a load shift or something like that happens? Have you been able to, because sometimes you'll get to a receiver and they'll reject the load and make you go restack it before they'll pull it off the truck. And then, then you go and pay hundreds of dollars, sometimes $1,000. Like we had one the other day that was $58, not that big of a deal. Then we had another one that was like $950. And that's a lot. $950 is a lot.
Yeah.
And then you just have to fight with the shipper and the broker to, who's going to pay for it. Are we getting stuck with the bill?
Yeah. Well, I'll echo you. Love to hear people's solutions. What do you do? Yeah. Especially that blows my mind. They won't even let the driver on the dock. And I don't know. I guess if I were a lawyer, a particularly litigious person even, then I could say like, oh yeah, it's probably just for liability purposes, right? Oh, we can't have them on the dock with all the heavy equipment that they're going to, whatever. Yeah. Not like they drive heavy equipment. Come on. Let them on the dock. Let them look. Okay. Well, anyway, that was not as fun a story as I was hoping for. So let's move on. Let's talk about leadership. Chris, the topic that you picked for today is leadership. And the first thought that went into my mind was the first sentence in your notes, which is, doesn't matter whether you're driving for yourself or you're leading a company with 20 trucks or 200 trucks, a lot of these principles are going to be the same, right?
Yeah, they really are. Leadership is, it's going to be different if you're an owner operator, and you are the company, versus if you've got a fleet of, a couple hundred trucks. How you operate is going to be different, but leadership traits and skills are very important in both situations.
Okay. So let me, before we get into those, have you noticed any shift in your mindset leadership-wise as the company has grown? When you were driving by yourself versus, now you've got, 15 people or so working in the company?
Yeah. So when I was just, it was just me driving and no drivers, all I had to focus on was the business itself, right? I needed to provide guidance and direction of how I wanted the business to go, what I wanted it to do, what I wanted it to be, and I did that. And then as you add employees, now you also have to be a mentor,
fireman.
You create the environment, you put out fires. I mean, you have to kind of expand on your leadership skills, right? To also include managing and dealing with people who work for your company. And so it changed a lot. And I kind of look at, I've had a lot of leadership opportunities,
I was just gonna ask.
Between the military, my businesses, in the corporate world before I had my businesses, and, even in church. Like, I've had leadership opportunities all over the place, sometimes for just a few people, but I've also been in leadership positions where I've been over hundreds of people. And so, like, I've had a pretty vast variety of different leadership opportunities, and feel like I've learned a whole bunch. And so, kind of with this podcast episode, more than anything, I just want you to start being cognizant of you as a leader, and help you kind of think about how can I constantly improve as a leader, and hopefully give you some ideas that'll kind of give you a leg up to being a better leader within your organization.
Okay. Well, let's dig in then. And you mentioned military stuff, corporate stuff, etc. I hope that there are some stories we can weave in there, because I'm interested in hearing some of what you've learned over the years. But let's start with the actual principles. Where do you want to start? What are some of the keys to being a good leader for a trucking company specifically? So
I think the first one, this is one that really applies whether you're an owner operator or you are the owner of a fleet. It's your primary responsibility. I think this is your number one role as a leader, is you provide guidance and direction. So guidance is more dealing with people. Direction is, how do I want my company to move forward? What do I want my company to be? You need to be really deliberate. You don't want it to just kind of evolve willy-nilly. You need to be deliberate about how you build your company.
So as you say, direction and guidance, I'm hearing strategy and tactics. Would this be fair?
Yeah,
right.
Fair.
So the strategy would be the overall direction that you're moving in. The tactics are the how do you accomplish those things, right? Okay, good. So
it's your responsibility as a leader to build that and provide that.
So what sort of things do you have to do then? For a trucking company, how are you providing that direction?
A lot of it kind of just starts with good company policies. How you want your drivers to operate, or how you want to operate. Make sure they understand what they can or they can't do. One of the things that a good leader needs to be good at is good communication, and that's how you through policies, oftentimes is kind of how you communicate things to your drivers or your employees.
So, all right, so you got to lay down the policy, and I imagine that helps with conflict resolution as well. If something comes up, you don't have to make up a rule on the fly. You've got a policy in place. Hey, you were driving recklessly, and it's right here, black and white in the rule book and the policy. Here's what we're going to do about it, right?
Yeah, because you want to treat people the same way, right? You don't,
as far as possible,
as much as possible. So if you have one driver that gets a speeding ticket, and then you have another driver that gets a speeding ticket, the repercussions for those situations are the same. If they aren't, you can get yourself into trouble.
So this is employee policies, kind of interpersonal stuff, but I imagine you could zoom out even further than that and say, what kind of trucking company do we want to be? Am I going to haul reefer? Am I doing flatbed? What kind of loads am I going to haul? Where do I want to go? That sort of thing, right?
Yep. That's exactly, and I'll kind of use an example of the early days of Haulin assets. We right from the beginning wanted to be a reefer company, right? And then we kind of got a little wild hair at one point and decided, hey, we've got a driver that wants to haul flatbed. We'll go out and buy a flatbed and try to haul flatbed. In the end, I mean, this turned out to be not the greatest decision in the world because it didn't really end up working out. And oftentimes, if you don't focus or specialize in something, you can get pulled in a million different directions. Instead of being really good at one thing, you can't ever really get good at anything, right? It's hard to, especially at a company our size, to get really good at being a refrigerated company, and then also get really good at being a flatbed company. Like it's just it's you're splitting hairs and you're dividing your time between two different things, and it's really hard to get good at any one of them. So that's why it's important to kind of decide what kind of company you're going to be and focus on that and work at getting really good at that.
Yeah. And then once you're established, once you've got some policies in place, what your company identity is, if you want to grow and expand, you're going to have to bring on drivers. And so I imagine this is another zoom out. What kind of person do I want to hire? Who are they going to be? What am I going to pay them? Right?
Yeah. So how big of a company you're going to be is something as the owner or the leader that you need to figure out. And then that's going to determine whether you need to hire employees or not. And then, it's you as the leader that decides here's what we're looking for in employees. And some of this stuff may seem like a no-brainer, but in reality, it's not. The kind of employee, the kind of driver you're looking for is going to have a big impact. And you don't want to just hire anybody. We've talked about this in other podcast episodes, but you need to be very deliberate. Like, this is the type of employee we're going to hire, and this is the kind of driver that we're looking for. And when you go through your as a leader, you're going to build out kind of your hiring process and your screening tools, and you want to make sure that you're hiring the type of driver that fits within the box of the type of company that you're going to be.
So let me see if I can put this in terms that even I can understand, Chris. So I think about sports teams. Okay, so I'm a baseball guy, but you could do this with any sport. What kind of organization do we want to have? Are we in rebuild mode? Are we in buy or sell mode? Do we want to have a young team that we can develop into our culture? Or do we want to trade for, more experienced guys who can come in and bring some clout, right? So I imagine that's part of the process, that decision process as well. What kind of employee are we going to hire? Are we going to take a little more risk on some younger, less proven drivers that we can save a few bucks on? Are we going to spend a little more, lower that risk by having proven drivers that, they are going to cost us, but we know that they're going to do a good job, right?
Yep.
Is that about right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's talk then, as you get these employees in there, and honestly, maybe it's just you, but we'll talk both ways. Let's talk about company culture. Because a leader is going to have a huge, huge impact on what type of culture you build. What does that look like for you?
So this is, culture, it seems like these days, a lot of the times kind of a big buzzword. But I've listed this as kind of the second thing because I'm a big fan of culture. I think it's super important within a business, and it really sets the tone for things. Whether it's in the military or it's in my business side of things, if you build the right culture, you're going to attract the right people, and the right people will help you get your business where you want it to be. Like, I think culture is critical, and the better you are at culture, the better your business is going to do. And so I think this is a really big deal. And a lot of it just has to do with, you want to make sure that you're hiring people that fit within the culture. So I'll take example like with Haulin Assets. Some of the things that are aspects that are important to our culture is we want drivers who are on time. That is important to us. And if we don't hire drivers, or we let drivers go if they have habitual problems with making appointments, that's one of our, we're not compromising on. This is important to us. And if you're not that kind of driver, then you're probably not the right person for our organization.
Okay. All right. So you're setting those expectations. What about, that's on the policy side, the do what I tell you to do side, right? To build that culture. But it's not just a negative thing. It can be a positive thing as well, how you treat your drivers. And I'm not just talking about how you pay them, although that's an important part of it, right? But how you treat time off, how you treat, interpersonal conflicts, that sort of thing, right?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of one of the cool things about the Haulin Assets culture is we put the drivers as critical, as important. You'll see other companies that have a culture with drivers is they're churn and burn. They don't care if the driver's with them for 3 months or a year. They treat, in my opinion, drivers terribly, where we try to treat the drivers really well. And I feel like our relationship with our drivers is similar to a marriage. In a marriage, both sides have to make compromises at times, right? Sometimes with our drivers, we need to do some things that might not be in the company's best interest, but is in the driver's best interest. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they need to do things that might not be in their best interest, but is in the company's best interest. You make compromises and you try to find that happy medium so that everybody is as happy as they can be as often as they can be, right?
Look at you, you're a ray of sunshine.
A ray of sunshine.
Everybody, be as happy as you can, says Chris.
We want our drivers to stick around for a long time.
Right.
And so we, oftentimes are willing to, like I said, make sacrifices so that they're happy. And on occasion we'll ask them to do the same. And I think what probably goes more, we make sacrifices on our side more often. At least I hope that's the way that it would feel. But it
makes it a little easier to ask
it
for
does,
something,
when you need
right?
it. Yep.
Okay. And, hey, it goes the other way around as well. And I imagine the hiring process for all of this is huge. Now, I neglected to look up the episode number, but we did a whole episode, or maybe more than one, on hiring and how you go about it. So if anybody's curious, wherever you're listening, just go to the search bar, Haulin Assets, and then type in hiring, and that should point you toward that episode. But maybe give me just, your 30-second elevator pitch on your hiring philosophy and how you go about interviewing and screening.
So for instance, so that hiring and that screening process, we have a bunch of questions that we ask. And those questions, a lot of them are geared towards, does that person fit into our company culture? For instance, our company culture is, our expectation is at a minimum, our drivers are driving 500 miles a day, for the most part. They're that's kind of what the expectation is. So if somebody doesn't want to do that, if they only want to work 8 hours a day when they're out on the road, it's probably not really a good fit. And so that's one of the questions we ask. We ask how long they want to be out, because our drivers, again, part of our culture is you're expected to be out between 10 and 14 days. Then you can have your downtime, your home time. And so we'll ask, questions that try to get to an understanding of what their expectation is of how often they want to be home. And if somebody wants to be home every weekend, that, just the way that we operate, that doesn't really work. And so, a lot of those screening questions are based on what that company culture is.
And it cuts both ways, right? You want to hire the right person who's going to be right for the company, but like you were saying earlier, you want your drivers to be happy and to be with you as long as possible. You don't want to hire somebody who's instantly going to be miserable because you're clashing with them, right? And so it's, I think we get caught up sometimes in corporate America, and I include trucking in that, yes, in thinking of interviews and screening as an adversarial process, and it just isn't. If you're doing it right, it's very collaborative. Am I right for you, and are you right for me? It goes both ways.
Absolutely, and that's one of the points that we always emphasize is we don't just want you to be happy or us to be happy with you. As we screen this, we want you to screen us too and make sure we're a good fit with what you want. Because again, both parties need to be happy in the relationship or it's not going to work.
Yeah.
I talked a little bit about marriage. one of the biggest, marriage, a divorce is difficult. For drivers, I mean, if you don't treat them right, it's really easy for them to walk away.
Right.
And
right.
in today's world in trucking, they can get a job just about anywhere. And so you've got to be able to create an environment that is that mutually beneficial environment. And we've had plenty of drivers that we've got through the interview process and just realized that, hey, I don't think we're really a good fit for each other, and we'll have to pass.
Yeah. That's how it goes. And with how many times you've brought up marriage now, Chris, I'm really looking forward to a future episode in which you dispense your actual marriage advice. People are going to love it.
My wife might not think that's a good...
We'll bring her on. She'll be... No, you know what? She'll replace you for that episode.
That might be like a 10-hour episode.
It's all story time about Chris. All right, let's move on. There are 2 words that you've got here on the notes that I need you to expound on. Servant leader. Okay. What the heck is that?
So this is one of those things that kind of comes from my military background, and servant leader is one of the things that is kind of stressed these days in the military.
See, I thought you were going church. I thought you were going super New Testament on me.
No, it's actually the military has decided that we're not going to be the
Patton.
Yeah, the guy that's beating the crap out of their soldiers to get them to do what they want.
Yeah.
Oftentimes I think we found that, if you show your people that you're willing to serve them and do stuff for them, they're gonna reciprocate it. And in the end, it makes for a better culture, and it makes for happier people on both sides of the equation.
Yeah.
And so, being a servant leader means you find ways to serve the people that you work with and to help them, to be a support for them, and really to serve them. And so, some of the things that we do at Haulin Assets to try to perpetuate that is, when we've got a driver that's coming into town, we'll sometimes deliver a load for them or go pick up a load for them so that they can spend more time at home, and they don't have to sit at a dock for who knows how long. We'll shuttle trucks to maintenance and repair appointments so that's not something that they have to worry about. We'll do stuff like that so that they can see that we care, and if you genuinely do that and you genuinely care, and your people see that, and it builds loyalty both ways.
Yeah, and you kind of brought up the idea of sincerity in that. If you really care, if you show them that you really care. Well, let me just add to that. Let's say you don't care that much. Do it anyway. And pretend you care. And eventually, guess what? You will.
You will. Yeah.
Fake it till you make it, right, Chris? What else do you do for your drivers to make them feel like they're on your priority list?
Give them a treat every once in a while, just a little token of gratitude. Even if it's as simple as what their favorite drink is, and you see them and you bring them one.
The non-alcoholic one to keep in the cab, right?
Yeah. Or maybe you take them something a little spicier when they're at home.
There you go. Nice.
So something like that. And I think another one that really goes a long way is, again, this is kind of part of that compromising. Oftentimes, like, a driver may want to do something. Let's say one of the things that kind of comes up with us on a fairly regular basis is in the wintertime, if you're going, let's say you're going to Florida from Utah, you can either take I-80 all the way across the Missouri, drop down, and then start kind of cutting the corner at that point.
Ooh,
that's kind of that's kind of the shortest route mileage wise. Or you can just kind of cut straight down south and then, take 40, 10, some of the other roads, which is a little bit longer. And, a driver sometimes will call up and ask and say, hey, I don't feel comfortable right now going up north, where in reality, like, we feel like, it may be a little bit dicey, but it doesn't look too bad.
You should be fine. Yeah.
You should be fine. If they, give them that win, right? Let them say, okay, yeah, that's fine. You can take the southern route.
You're not losing that much as the employer,
right?
You're giving them a sense of control, and not even just a sense. You are giving them some control over how they're doing their job, right?
Yep. Yeah. So that's just one example, but just find ways to let them participate in the process, and let them go with their ideas sometimes, even if you may not think it's the best way to do it. Sometimes the gratitude that you gain from the driver, or their appreciation or their loyalty that you gain, is well worth that little extra price you pay, either in something that's slightly less efficient or whatnot. Like oftentimes, like in the military or in my businesses, I'll have an idea of one way I want to do something. Somebody else will have another idea of how they want to do it, and we'll talk about it. We'll go through it, and even if I don't feel like that's the best route, but it's an acceptable route, I'll let the other person run with their idea. Again, it empowers people. It emboldens people. It makes them more likely to have initiative when they do things. I just think there's a lot that is gained by letting somebody else kind of have that control and run with things.
Right. Okay. So let's move on to our final principle, I suppose. A lot of what we talked about is how you are relating to those who work with or for you. But it's not just about that. Yeah, being a leader, creating culture, all this stuff starts with you, right? And I imagine that's where we're going when I see the word self-aware as the next principle, right? So
yeah, and this one's easier said than done, right? Being self-aware can be really hard.
Yeah.
And some people just will never get it. So yeah, be self-aware.
That's where we go, #mentor. Find yourself a mentor.
Absolutely. I don't care how good of a leader you are, there's always other people that you can learn from that can mentor you, that have had more experience, and having a mentor is always a good thing. And a mentor can kind of help point out some of those things that might be a little bit challenging for you. And so as you be self-aware, that's kind of what you're looking for. It's like, be honest with yourself and find the things that you are doing that are causing challenges or creating issues in your organization, and change them. So that might be something. You might be a micromanager. Like, again, going back to the route planning, we rarely get in the middle of our drivers and how they want to drive a route. We do ask them if there's like more than a 50-mile deviation to at least let us talk it through with us. But we give them a lot of latitude in how they do that. We don't try to micromanage how they drive, when they drive, all those kind of things. As long as they meet remember that one critical thing I said?
Be on time.
Be on time. That's the most important thing. As long as you're meeting that, we're not going to get into how you operate, when you drive, what you do.
Okay. All right. Very good. Anything else on the self-awareness side of things? Or, you know what? Actually, I know you wanted to recommend some books and resources. Maybe that's one way you can be self-aware, right?
It is.
Yeah. What do you got for me?
So that's the last kind of thing I want to talk about in this episode is being a leader is a lifelong pursuit. Getting better at it is something that you should do for the rest of your life. And one of the, I'm going to talk about a few ways that I kind of try to work on my leadership abilities. And one of the biggest ways, probably the biggest way for me, is I like to read books, read books on leadership. So talk a little bit about some of the ones that have had the greatest impact on me. I'm not really going to go into the details on them. I'm just going to kind of list them out. But the first one's Good to Great, and that one's by Jim Collins, a great book on leadership and business. Another one that I really like is The Speed of Trust. And it's not a very common, well-known book, but I think it literally is one of the best books I've ever read. And this is more for if you've got employees. This one's like
how to build trust.
It's more applicable. Yep.
Okay.
It's written by, I should have looked up the initials. It's written by Stephen Covey.
Okay.
But it's the son of the Stephen Covey that wrote the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Oh, it's the 7 Habits are a family business.
And
now,
that, yeah, it is. And that's another good book. Both of those are really good.
Yeah.
Start with Why by Simon Sinek.
So the book is called Start with Why.
Yeah.
That was not a direction to the the listeners. Okay.
And then another thing that I really like are biographies. I read a lot of biographies of great leaders, and you can, they may not be specific about leadership, but you learn about the person and how they lead. and there's lots of really good nuggets that you can learn from them. So some of the ones that I've read fairly recently that I've really enjoyed are the one on Ulysses S. Grant, Alexander Hamilton, and I forgot to put the authors of those two. Then another one, Buffett, Making of an American Capitalist. That one's by Roger Lowenstein. And then two books by the same guy, Walter Isaacson. He wrote a biography on Steve Jobs, and he wrote one on Elon Musk. And all of those are really good. And it doesn't really matter which leader, like a good leader and their biography, you get just a ton of good information from them.
Okay. Well, good. Any other nuggets, tidbits before we move on to a listener question that I am going to spring on you at the end of the episode?
Just two more things. Just be reflective. So spend some time every day, every week, every month on being reflective. And this can be trying to determine, being more self-aware, thinking about how you can be a better leader, thinking how you can make your organization better. Take some time to think. And then just the last thing, and this one can be kind of hard, but it's really important, and it's get feedback.
Get feedback.
Ask your drivers, hey, what can I be doing better? How can I support you more? I think as a leader, one of our other really good keys, I didn't put this as one of my keys to success, but I think it's important, is we need to set the conditions so that our employees, whether they're a driver or a soldier, can be successful. And so you need to set those conditions. And so you ask them, what can I be doing better as your leader? And then also, if you can find situations where you can ask your peers or mentors,
even mentors. #mentors.
Yeah, ask any of those for feedback. And then another really good way to do it is anonymous surveys.
It's which, now let me put myself in your shoes as the leader, the actual leader of this company, where when you're an employee, oftentimes it's fun to make fun of the anonymous surveys. Oh yeah, right, like that's anonymous. But a good company, a good leader really does make them anonymous and uses them.
They do, and read through them. Like I've done some within my businesses, but I've also, the military is actually pretty good about doing these. And so, I've done, surveys that include hundreds of people that I've been over, and the feedback's really good. Take it to heart.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good. Anything else before we abandon the subject of leadership for now, Chris?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Let's hear this question.
Well, hang on. The question is coming up. No. Okay. But first,
be patient.
I have to remind everybody of Haulin Assets Academy. Check the show notes. Okay. So it's been a whole, 35 minutes or so. You forgot about it. So now go check the comments now that the episode is wrapping up. Or comments. Good. Check the description and you'll find a link to Haulin Assets Academy. All right, let's leave that there for now. Chris, this is a question that, can I just tell you, I'm predicting already what the first two words out of your mouth are going to be. In fact, I'm going to write them down. Okay.
This is going to be interesting. This is fun.
Okay. So I have your answer written down. Are you ready?
See how well you know me.
Well, all right. So the question, it was on YouTube, and it came from Mark Pierce 97 a few weeks ago on a recent episode. Said, would Chris be so kind as to share what he would consider to be an ideal rate per mile for a direct shipper reefer load?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I'm ready for you.
Okay, so you've got a number.
No. I've got the first two words of your answer. Do you want to know what they are? Why don't you just tell me what they are?
What my answer is? What my ideal rate is?
Oh no, they can't see that. I'm trying to hold it up for the YouTube audience.
It depends.
Hey, now we're talking. All right.
It does. It varies a lot on a lot of different things, but I would say if you get up to trying to keep this as general as you can, up to $2.75 plus, $2.75 a mile plus.
That's as a direct shipper reefer load, $2.75. Wow. Is it? I mean, you guys aren't getting that right now on your direct shippers, are you?
We are.
Are you? Yeah. Wow. Okay. Man, I'm excited.
Broker stuff's closer to 2, but
right.
Direct shippers closer to $2.75.
Okay.
Sometimes more.
That is a way clearer answer than I was expecting. Oh, well, it depends on what you pay for your truck. What's your route?
So honestly, it shouldn't pay. None of that matters. It's what the customer's going to be willing to pay, not what your expenses are. That's not how you price things.
Here, I'm the one complicating things there, Chris. All right. Well, that's a good question. And, people can go on YouTube. They can go on Facebook. They can go wherever, ask questions, and we will see about answering those. Chris, thanks for the clear answer.
Yeah, good to be here.
All right. I'll see you in a couple weeks.
See ya.